So you're thinking about moving to or buying a home in the greater Seattle area, and you're not really sure where to start, how the process works, or who you should be talking to first. If so, this video is definitely for you. In this video, I'm going to cover the home buying process as a whole, as it pertains to the greater Seattle area or region, and the key things to be doing as a home buyer. You know, a home buyer's consultation. Make sure to stick around to the end of the video where I will be going over a strategy you could be using to find a great deal on your next home. Let's get into it right now. Hey, if this is your first time on the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living, eating, breathing, sleeping, working, playing in the greater Seattle area, then subscribe below, tap the bell for notifications so you can be the first to learn about the current real estate market in the greater Seattle, Washington area. Hi, my name is Morrow. I'm a local realtor in the greater Seattle area, serving clients, both buyers and sellers in King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties. Our team and I get calls, texts, and emails every day from people just like you looking to make their move over here to the Seattle area, and we absolutely love it. So whether you're looking to make your move in 9 days or 90 days, give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email, or schedule a Zoom. All of the information is in the description below, so we can help you make a smooth move into home ownership in the greater Seattle area. Okay, let's get into your home buyer's consultation. Right now on my screen, I have open our home buyer guide that we give to all of our prospective home buyers that are looking to possibly buy anytime. So you will also have access to this as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to provide a link to you for this, as well as if you're on my website, there is several locations that you can easily get access to this as well. If you have trouble finding it for whatever reason, please reach out to me and I'd be happy to send one your way. So I've gone a couple pages down because I'm skipping all the stuff about our team. Really, I want to get in the meat and potatoes about the home buying process here. So we've shrunk it down into 5 easy steps. Step 1, planning and preparation. Step 2, finding a home. Step 3, prepare and submit an offer. Step 4, under contract. And step 5, escrow and closing. So I'm going to expand upon those, but I'm kind of giving you a tour of this guide as well. And I might make a secondary video too of just me going over this information on my own without using the guide to show you around. And that would just help cater to different learning styles, basically. But I wanted to at least give you a tour through our guide so you have a better understanding of the home buying process. Okay, so step 1, planning and preparation. This is where you're at right now. You're watching this video, and the loan pre-approval process right here, it's the most important step to buying a home. Unless you're going to buy the house in cash, you're going to have to get a home loan. And it's super important to figure out numbers first with a lender, because you want to know not only 1, what you can get pre-approved for, but 2, you also want to know, is that pre-approval amount, does that fit within your budget? Because if you're not buying the home in cash, you're going to be someone that's getting a home loan, so you're going to be putting a certain amount of money down. And number 2, based on the purchase price, closing costs, multiple factors, how much you're putting down, and what the interest rate is, all of that, it's going to factor into how much your monthly payment is. So super important to know that, because just because you're pre-approved for, let's say, $900,000, you might work backwards with the lender and come up with, based on a maximum monthly payment of blank, you might only want to look for houses that are up to $700,000. So super important to go through this pre-approval process first. You don't have to be committed to the lender you go through the pre-approval process with first in order to look for houses. Pretty common misconception, super easy to shop around. However, I do recommend to most of my home buyers, it's a smoother process if you get the home shopping or shopping around for a lender done before you go under contract with the seller. I'll show you more as we get down there, and there is, in your offer, typically there's by default, there's a certain amount of days you get to shop around for a home loan, but it's just a much super easier process if you've taken the time to get that done ahead of time. Now, I get it. It doesn't always work out that way, but I have seen it more often than not go less smooth for the people that try to do the shopping after they go under contract than if they've gotten their shopping done and they know which lender they're moving forward with prior to going under contract. That being said, either way, what you want to do is at least get one pre-approval from a lender that you've gone back and forth with on the numbers, so you have a good idea of how high you can go on a home search. Really is what's super important to me as your realtor. So then I know what to set that search up for you, because I don't want to get a search going if I don't want us looking at houses that are way out of what you want to spend on your monthly payment. It doesn't make sense for either one of us, right? So loan process, super important to do. Check this out in our guide. This is kind of helps you figure out what the numbers look like, but I will save that for you to do either through the guide or definitely work that through with the lender. Again, side note, on my website, there's tons of lenders that you could be using. If you like a recommendation of a good lender that a lot of our clients end up working with or have used in the past, I have several great, fantastic lenders that I can recommend to you. All of them have different attributes. So based on the information after we meet, I might have a recommendation of 3 that might be different from someone else. So feel free to reach out to me so I can make some lender recommendations for you and get that ball rolling when you're ready. Okay, so let's talk about the costs of buying a house. So before you're even looking at houses, again, these are some good numbers that you want to know about. So there's the down payment. It can range anywhere typically from 0 to 20%. Sometimes people do over 20, like I've seen people do high down payments where they're coming in with half of the amount down, where it's like over 50% down on the house. I don't see it too often, especially for houses that are more expensive. But you can really put anything down. It comes down to working with your lender on figuring out what makes sense for your long-term goals and which loan product works. Because, most of the time, less money down equates to a higher monthly payment. That's not always true, though. Something super important to talk to a lender about and work with and figure out what loan product is right for you. But typical brackets, I guess I would call it, that I see 0 down. And you can either get a 0 down loan through either a VA loan if you're current or prior military. You can get a USDA 0 down loan. That's a good loan option if you're looking in rural areas that the USDA home loan program covers. And using a realtor, we can look into what areas those are. For the greater Seattle region, I definitely know, and I can help you with that. There's also, sometimes there's a 1% conventional down loan product available. It comes and goes, that one. So that one's really interesting to see when it's an available product and when it's not. There's a 3% down conventional. 3.5% is the most common FHA, first-time homebuyers loan, that I see, 3.5% down. There's also a down payment assistant programs out there that you do have a down payment, but the program's actually covering the down payment. Most of the time, the switch for that is the interest rates will be higher on those loans. So something to look into with your lender. 5% down is usually the most common conventional loan I see, but anywhere from 5, 10, 20%. So the point is, I don't want to get too much into the weeds on this, but there's the down payment. So you need to calculate how much you're going to be doing with the down payment. And again, to figure that out, obviously get pre-approved to talk to your lender. Earnest money. That's another upfront cost to talk about. And let's go over it. So the down payment's going to be due at closing. The earnest money, this is going to be deposited, at least in our area. The default or the going typical to put in your offer is 2 business days after going under contract. So this money's due within a couple of days after the seller accepts your offer, which I'll go over as we go down here later. It's typically between 1 to 2% is what we're seeing the going amount. Everything's negotiable, but remember, the lower it is below 1%, the weaker your offer could be perceived. So it's just something to keep in mind that we typically see that number anywhere from 1 to 2% of the purchase price. And that gets held by the title and escrow company. So the same company that's in charge of transferring homeownership from the seller to you as the buyer, they're in charge of holding on to that till we tell them contractually what to do with that. And I'll get into that in a bit, but earnest money is super important to realize. Essentially, there's three things that can happen with earnest money. Is either one, when you close the deal on the house becomes yours, and the earnest money got applied towards all your upfront costs. So if you had some closing costs or you had a down payment, whatever the difference is, it went towards that. If there was a deficit, or meaning that you owed less at closing than your earnest money amount was, you'd get that refunded back to you. Some people, if they do a zero down loan and they gotten the seller to agree to pay all their closing costs, will get all of the earnest money back, basically. So that's the first thing that can happen to you with the earnest money. Second thing is you leave the deal in a way you're allowed to, which all of my buyers are very well educated by me on how they can leave the deal that they've written, because we have a separate meeting about going over an offer, which again I'll cover in a bit. But if you leave the deal in a way you're allowed to contractually, you get the earnest money back. It can take anywhere from a few business days to a couple of weeks, depending on the escrow company and the form that you agree to receive it back from. And then option 3, which none of my home buyers have gone through this yet, but if you leave the deal in a way you contractually are not allowed to leave the deal, the seller gets to keep the earnest money. So that's the only event where the seller gets to keep it, where you have done something that's against the contract. And again, all of my buyers will know ahead of time how they can leave or stay within the deal. So they're not going to be at least caught off guard. There's never going to be a buyer I'm working with that's like, oh, I didn't know I'm going to lose the earnest money. It's not going to happen. Okay, so going into inspections, this is another upfront cost to keep in mind. This is due to the inspector pretty much right after they do the inspection. Some of them, they'll send you an invoice and you can pay it the next day, but like they won't give you the home report until you pay. Some of them, their policy is to pay right then they'll give you the report. Either way, pretty much just expect to pay it when the inspection has been conducted. And that's typically within 5 business days is kind of the going, what people put on these inspection contingencies to have, as far as the amount of time to have an inspection done. So that's usually something you're going to be paying within your first week of going under contract. That can range anywhere from $400 to $700. Also, on older homes, you could get a sewer scope inspection. Those typically are about $250 too. We always recommend getting those on a house that the inspector recommends to get it on. So, but keep those costs in mind. The appraisal is another fee that you could be paying up front prior to closing. Some lenders wrap this into their closing costs at closing, or they have you pay it up front on a credit card. So those typically range $700 to $1,000. Do keep that in mind, that depending on the lender you've gone with, you might be paying that up front when you order the appraisal. Again, the appraisal is something that in a typical market, typical deal, buyers also ordering that within the first week as well. So inspection, appraisal, and earnest money, you're handling all of those within the first week of going under contract. Closing costs, these are fees, lender fees, escrow fees, title fees, homeowners insurance, taxes, etc. They're all collected to close on your home, and that's all done at closing. They typically range from 2 to 3%, but it's negotiable depending on the loan you've gotten. Some loans you can get the seller to pay for all of your closing costs if you negotiate the seller to do it and the seller agrees to it. Sometimes the seller, if you have more where the seller can pay all your closing costs but you have an excess, especially in a market like this where we have interest rates have been a little bit higher, you might be able to get a rate buy down from the seller or to pay for. That's a completely separate video. But if you're like in the comments, you want to know rate buy down, what's that, Aaron? I'll explain it in the comments. So, or look for my separate video that explains rate buy downs. And then, okay, so this is kind of where you're at when you are choosing a realtor to work with, whether you're choosing the person in front of you in the video or just anyone local to you. Definitely super important to figure out a realtor that you want to work with, one that you feel comfortable with. I'm not going to go into them too much, but these are the agent, talks a little bit about our roles as an agent to how we help you through the home buying process. This talks about how buyer's agents get paid. Typically, we get paid through the sale. So when it closes, the seller has agreed to give their agent a certain amount of commission. And in that listing agreement, they've also agreed to give a certain amount of it to the buyer's agent's firm. And then the firm distributes it from there. So some buyers are like, I guess I'm indirectly paying for it. It's wrapped in the cost, but all you have to know as a buyer is if it's in the listing and if there is a commission that's agreed upon in the listing on the MLS, which 99% of them are, and you haven't agreed to pay your buyer anything or your buyer's agent anything extra on top of that amount, then you're not going to be paying anything to your buyer's agent out of pocket at closing for services rendered. So something to have as a conversation with your buyer's agent, because some houses, they might not offer any commission. It's an interesting market we're heading into, but something to talk to your buyer's agent on so you can be on the same page with how they get paid. So good read through to learn how this all works right here. This is so a form that we send to our clients after we do our consultation, or even after I have a discovery call with all these people calling me through YouTube or, through social media or meeting me online, Google Business, my website. I send them a wish list form. It's the buyer intake form, but I call it the wish list form because this form helps me understand and go super in depth with you as the buyer, how I can better find what you're looking for. Like, are you looking for a fireplace? Are you looking, there's so many questions in there that I wouldn't even begin to remember to ask or mention in the video, but super helpful form for me because actually I'm constantly looking at that form for my buyers to make sure that I'm finding them the right house. So after you've gotten pre-approved, again, I mentioned you set up your home search and you get that home search going and you've based that home search off the numbers that you've worked with the lender to figure out what the purchase price is that you want to pay for based on working backwards with a monthly payment that you want to stay under. And then once we get that process going, like I mentioned before, or I believe I mentioned before in this video, is I will do some extra steps to make sure that the house I'm going to go show you is a good use of your time as a buyer. I don't want my home buyers seeing houses that if they like it, they can't make an offer on the property. So one of the most important things I do is I double check to make sure that the house that my buyer has liked and is interested in seeing, I have verified that it has a good chance of going with the type of loan they're doing. Let's say, for instance, you're a buyer that you have to get an FHA loan, a first-time home buyer's loan, and you can't go conventional. Well, in that instance, there might be a house that has a very particular reason why it can only go conventional and not FHA. Even maybe for like a 90-day period. I know there's a rule in our area where if a house was just recently bought and a flipper bought it to upgrade it and resell it, there's actually a certain amount of time, I think it's 90 days, I'd have to check again, where if they sell it to a buyer, that buyer has to get a conventional loan. They can't get an FHA loan on it for a 90-day period. So anyways, that's just one of many examples. I don't want to go show you a house that you would end up falling in love with only to find out that your loan type wouldn't work for it. So I do some extra steps to make sure that it passes the sniff test. We go see it, and then once you end up liking the house or we find one that you like and you're ready to make an offer, that's what we're going to talk about in meeting again, either in person or over Zoom or through computer phone, to talk about putting the offer together and what your offer looks like, everything that's in your offer. really educate you as the buyer on the ins and outs of your offer, all the checkpoints that you have to pass through your offer to get to the closing table, to close on the house, to get your keys to your house. We go over all that in the putting your offer together consultation. I cover a little bit, obviously, in this video in my home buyers consultation, but I really go in depth on it when we are going to recover it and rehash some things when you're actually putting your offer together, because I do not want any surprises to my home buyers after we're under contract on something. It's my goal to make sure that my home buyers are never asking the question, oh, what's next? I'm always going to remind them what the next step is so they can rest assured and feel comfortable knowing what they should be doing through their home buying process. So one thing to touch base on this, when we search for houses on the MLS, some of them have where they're restricted a showing time, right? So sometimes when you work it out with your home buyer where you want to go, or your buyer's agent where you want to go see several properties, sometimes it can be harder for the agent to schedule all that, because just to give you a peek behind the curtain on the back end, there's a lot of these listings. The seller will either say, call the seller to confirm the showing, or they'll use a nifty showing time scheduling software that you go in there and you schedule and line up your appointments. And what I do for my clients is I try to make the trip the most efficient. So if they give me 7 houses and they've all passed the sniff test, I will then go in to schedule the tours based on the times that they were available for. And I'll try to make it where they're not zigzagging all over the counties, right? I want them to go in some sort of sequential order to make the drive time easier for them. Sometimes it takes a bit of finesse and it's almost an art form. A lot of agents make fun of this on social media, agent groups. This is a struggle for most agents. The struggle is real, but we can definitely do it for you, no problem. Just understand that sometimes an agent might say no to a showing, and it's not because they couldn't show it to you. It's because the seller wasn't allowing to show it at that time. So there's a nugget for you right there. New construction is interesting, so I'm going to throw this out there. Every new construction property that you want to go see as a buyer has different registration policies. Some of them have it where in order for your buyer's agent to properly represent you, where they'll get paid or a commission or reimbursed at closing, they have to take you through that site registration. Some of them, it's the agent had to be there in person at your first meeting with that new construction builder the very first time. If you weren't, they're not going to pay your agent a fee. If some of them, it's just as simple as calling ahead, and I, the realtor, would fill out the form and register you as my buyer, and then they would just confirm once you get there on site yourself. Either way, it's complicated, and the best rule of thumb is before you go see any new construction property and you have an agent that you like, that you're actually working with, and you want to make sure that they get compensated for something at the end of your home buying journey, check in with them up front to make sure that we're following the site policies right, to make sure that you have the best new construction experience, and to make sure that agent can properly represent you and won't cripple them in a situation where they can't properly represent you. FSBOs, for sale by owners. So that's a whole nother thing. Most for sale by owners are off market, but some of them do list on the MLS. I won't get into too crazy explaining how they do that, but long story short, for sale by owner is just, it's someone selling on their own, so they're not going to be represented by a seller. Those are some really nice ones because sometimes you can get a good deal on those. All right, step 3, prepare and submit. This is where we talked about putting the offers together, but essentially what you're going to be looking to do in this situation, we're going to meet to go over your offer, everything that you want to make in your offer. You know, like how much do you want to offer? How much do you want to offer as your earnest money? When's the closing date going to be? Are you going to protect yourself with financing? Are you going to protect yourself with title? Are you going to protect yourself by having a home inspection? These are things that we talk about to put into your offer because everything's negotiable. But essentially, when you make an offer, something for you to know is the only thing, or one of the few only things that you put in your buyer, or as a buyer, that you can proactively back out on the seller for any reason, is the inspection contingency. So you are supposed to technically have had the inspection done, but that's your time to essentially get out of it for any reason type of type of deal. If you and the seller can't come to terms on either repairs that you're asking for, or if you just want to walk away because after the inspection you're like, nope, not on this house, that's your time where you can leave the deal for any reason. Any other protections you have after that, something has to go wrong where you and the seller aren't in agreement on something for you to leave the deal. So there's no other opportunities in your deal most of the time, at least in this state, where you can just proactively leave it for any reason. So just do keep that in mind. But your realtor, I will explain that thoroughly to you. You know, again, like I said, most likely you're going to have a financing protection. So that's going to protect you if your financing falls apart. So you get your earnest money back. You're going to have an appraisal protection in there, meaning the house has to appraise for the amount you're offering, or you and the seller have to renegotiate where you want the price to be. Super important protection to have in there as a buyer if you can have it in there, because it's going to protect you in the event that it comes in lower, because your bank or lender will only loan to you the amount the appraisal is for, or the appraisal comes back at, not the amount that you have offered on your purchase price. So any gap or any difference between appraisal amount and purchase price amount that you've offered, now that has to be negotiated with the seller, and either the seller has to come down to the appraisal amount or you have to come up to what the seller wants, or somewhere in the middle. So you get the opportunity to back out on the seller with an appraisal protection in there if you and the seller do not see eye to eye in that scenario. So as you can see, once you've submitted the offer, and let's say, congrats, the seller accepted your offer, earnest money, typically it's due in 2 business days, but that depends on what you put in your offer. You have your home inspection within the first week. Congrats, you've moved past your home inspection. You ordered the appraisal within the first week and it comes back within, 2 weeks. Congrats, appraisal went well. Now you're in like your final 2-week period, because the typical closing time from the moment you go under contract to the moment you close and get your keys, that's typically 30 days. Sometimes they can go up to 45 days. It kind of depends on the year, like the time of year, and how stressed the market is for, and how long appraisals are taking. A lot of that depends. But again, here's a good chart to kind of give you an idea the time frame that we're talking about here and what would end up happening. So real quick, I can make a whole separate video, which I will, on how the inspection process looks. But just so you know, these are common inspection items that end up coming up in, at least in our state, including HVAC typically always needs service unless the seller serviced it. There's always moss on the roof. I should never say always, but take it with a grain of salt. There's moss on the roof a lot. GFCI comes up a lot. Rodent activity in the PNW, Pacific Northwest, comes up a lot. Bathroom exhaust fan, not where it just vents into the attic versus to the exterior of the property. That comes up a lot too. So we've put this in here. These are the most common things that come up on home inspections, so just be aware of them. And it's a difference in opinion between you and the seller on what's important to ask for. Everything's negotiable, so work with your agent on what your strategy is for when you reply back on your inspection response, because how it will work is you get to have your home inspection. And if you didn't indicate that it was a pass-fail inspection, meaning it's a normal, typical inspection, you get the opportunity to respond back to the seller. And you either get to say, yes, we're moving forward. Nope, don't want the house. I'm getting out. Give me my earnest money back. Or, you know what, we'll move forward if you do blank, blank, and blank. And that could either be a reduction in price, a combination of reduction in price, or asking for closing costs, or asking for some much needed repair work. And then the seller will come back with either yes, no, or how about this. That can go back and forth a few times. And again, I'm going to make a video that explains the key crucial points to remember when doing the inspection dance. But essentially, just understand that you and the seller have to come to some sort of terms to move forward with the deal. So once that's taken care of, if we've asked the seller to do repairs, or regardless, in your offer, you're given a final walkthrough before closing. And that depends on what you've put in there, but typically I've seen it where it's 5 business days prior to closing. So within 5 business days, you get to go do a final walkthrough where you go into the property one more time. And that final walkthrough is to make sure, the house is in similar condition that you saw it in. There's no big, gigantic holes in the wall that weren't once there. All the windows are there. All the windows aren't cracked if they weren't cracked to begin with. The seller hasn't taken all the appliances. They didn't take the floor. It's for you to make sure that the house is in the same or similar condition that you saw it in. That being said, it's also another good opportunity to make sure that the seller did the repairs that they agreed to if you asked for them to do repairs and negotiated those in your inspection response. So there's a lot to read through here, but I think this is a lot of good stuff for you to definitely take a look through. But that's essentially it. So the final few days before closing, what will end up happening in that 30-day period is you're going to sign your final closing paperwork. And I'll go back to the... let me go back up here. So final walkthrough, appraisal, sign loan documents. So you'll actually either meet at the escrow company or they'll send a notary to you wherever you want to meet, like a Starbucks or whatnot. We have out-of-state clients who buy out of state all the time, and we just send the notary to their location in their state. I have plenty of clients, just to make you aware, that buy completely 100% sight unseen, where they were relying on us to make sure we were doing the video tours for them. We were doing the video walkthrough during the home inspection. We did the video walkthrough through the final walkthrough. So they had a good idea of what the house was, and they signed papers remotely. Then the first day they saw their house was even after they got keys, because technically they weren't moving for another month or so. We've had plenty of those types of clients. And then we've had other clients that want me to go they live out of state, so they can't come for all their showings. So I do video tours for them and virtual walkthroughs, where there's virtual walkthrough videos that some listing agents have. We can get very creative with it. I get very detailed, where I'll even show like in drawers and stuff. And then they'll come out to their inspection if they go under contract with something, or they'll come out to their final walkthrough to see the house. So everyone has different comfort zones when it comes to their home process, but you can, in today's day and age, buy a home 100% remotely, and it can be done properly, safely, and with zero buyer's remorse. So just throwing that out there, that is available to you if you are looking to move over here and you want to secure something when you're out of state. Let's talk your options. And then closing day happens, right? And then typically, if you didn't agree that the seller gets longer to move out, you get your keys on that day. House is yours. Congrats. So, I mean, that's the process in general. I could overcomplicate it even more and get into the weeds on some stuff, but there's not much point doing it in this video, because this was already covering a lot of information. So there you have it. If you have any questions regarding this, please look at this PDF. Let me know. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and send a comment, or call, text, or email me, and we can discuss more about your home buying goals and what you're looking to do with this. And there you have it. If you're ready to take your first steps towards home ownership in the greater Seattle area, I'm here and ready to work with you. We'll make sure to go over all of your goals, answer all of your questions, and make sure to get you moving into your next correct steps to take. And remember, our team gets calls, texts, and emails every day from home buyers just like you looking to make their move over here, and we absolutely love it. So whether you're looking to make your move in 9 days or 90 days, give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email, or schedule a Zoom call, all in the description below. And until then, I hope to be showing you around town.